Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. And on today's episode, I've got some special guests with me. We're going to be discussing Kiss, the end of a new era, their final show, a new chapter in the life of Kiss, is the immortal, the never-ending Kiss story. This has been a lot of Kiss stuff here at the Lair. I'm a fan of Kiss. A lot of people think I'm not a fan of Kiss. I would say I'm not a super fan of Kiss. So I was sort of blissfully unaware that I knew that their final show was coming up. I had no idea it was going to be pay-per-viewed. I didn't know that there was going to be this big announcement at the end of it. So we're getting a lot of Kiss content. Martin was on here. We talked about his Kiss at 50 book. We were talking about the legacy of Kiss. Ace Frehley had a new song. I did a live listening reaction to Ace Frehley. But this is big news. Just before we started this video, I was scrolling down my Facebook feed, and there's all kinds of people getting sentimental over Kiss here, you know, tears in their eyes and everything, telling the stories about what Kiss means to them and all that. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about Kiss, their final show. We're going to talk about the Kiss Avatar. That's something that a lot of people have been talking about. I'm not 100% sure what the Kiss Avatar is. I don't know if the guys in the band know what the Kiss Avatar is. Just before we started this, I don't know if any of you guys saw this, but on the official Kiss YouTube channel, they just posted this 30-minute thing about the Avatar. And it's like 30 minutes of them sitting around a table talking about how great the band is with the people who created this thing. And then at the very end, they go, well, can we see it? And they show you about a minute of it. And then it just ends. They don't tell you what they're going to do with it. They don't tell you, you know, what is this? What do they plan on doing with this? That's what we're going to talk about here. So let me introduce who we have here. These guys have all been at the Lair at one time or another. We got Steven from the Rock Fantasy Files. We've got Butch. We've got Tony Dio. So guys, thanks for joining me here. Let's talk some Kiss. Yeah, Steven, Kiss, what do you think? End of an era. What do you think of this Avatar thing?
I'm not sure what to think about the Avatar, but I can give you a little rundown of what I did. I went to the final show.
Oh, you were there. Okay.
Oh, I thought that's why you invited me. I didn't know. No. So all along, I've told everyone, oh, Keeler, you got to be going to this show, right? I'm like, nah, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. Then I get kind of Friday night. I was thinking of going Friday because I had Chris Allo. Of course, you guys all know Chris from Sea of Tranquility and longtime journalist. He's like, hits me up Friday afternoon. He's like, dude, tickets are dropping. They're dropping right now. You can get in cheap tonight. I'm like, I'm working a show at my venue that I've been working at in Middletown, so I cannot go. Next morning, I'm driving 2 hours into Connecticut to a pinball gathering to celebrate a new Elton John pinball release. So I'm up there all day. Then I'm kind of getting hyped up watching because I kind of want to go to the show now. And I'm keep trying to get on my Ticketmaster. And they, you know, the Ticketmaster and the mobile sends you that code, that 6-digit code. Every time I did it, I could not get in. So meanwhile, I've got some friends in New York City that keep sending me, hey, we're looking. I hang out with a bunch of guys that never buy tickets in advance. And I've been like that a lot lately too. We kind of wait till day of show. Sometimes it's like Vegas, you roll the dice. And I ended up about 5 o'clock. I'm driving back towards the city because I'm kind of heading home from the other gathering. And guy goes, hey, I got side of Gene Simmons, side 115, row 28 for 229. I'm like, that's with fees? I said, yeah, get him. We'll go. So I drove to Manhattan, got to the venue. Tried to get an event shirt. I'm actually wearing one that I bought in Allentown a few years ago. Right before the pandemic, I did I've done this tour 3 times. I saw At the Garden back, I think it was like 2019 when it first started. And then I saw it in 2020 in Allentown just before the lockdowns. And so I saw this tour twice. And I just got caught up. It's like my friends are like, you gotta come, you gotta go. I'm like, all right, I'm going. I just got that. Well, it's gonna be epic. It's at the Garden. It's the final show, we think, right? I mean, they're gonna do avatars now, but whatever that's gonna be. But so I go to the show, I get into the venue, I want to get an event shirt. I said it's always good to get the event shirt with the Garden on the back. You couldn't get any of that stuff. It was all sold out. And wow. I was in there like 20 minutes after tours, and you still couldn't get like the posters are going for big bucks on eBay.
Oh yeah.
The venues. Another little trinket I got on the way out is this gold ticket.
You got one. That's great.
I did get one, and I tell you
That's
what,
awesome.
I had two because the guy that owns Stuffs in New York City was just handing one to me, and I'm like, sure. I didn't even know what this was. I saw this box. They're giving you a box. I figured maybe it's a Kiss makeup kit. I don't know, and it's got a certificate in it. So I got one of these. People are telling me today, and I've been having friends call me back and forth, that these are on eBay for hundreds of dollars.
I heard $2,000.
Maybe I'll sell it if anybody
What-
wants to give me $2,000. What the
Was
heck,
just
you know?
like something they were selling at the merch table? Like
No, it was on the way out, John. On the way
they were just
out,
handing them to people
they
on
were
the way
just
out?
handing these gifts here. Gift from Kiss. Gift from Kiss.
Oh wow.
And it's a
Hey, is
pretty
it a real
decent.
signature on the other side? Are they real signatures? Or are they just like laser printed?
I think it's a print. It says on the back, official band signatures.
Mhm.
I mean, if you had another one to match it against, you could probably tell, but I wouldn't. I don't know if there's supposedly 10,000 of these were made. I'm not real sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine them signing that many, but you know,
That's what I was thinking.
sign a few a day
Supposedly,
for a couple of years.
supposedly people that watched the pay-per-view said they were selling those on the pay-per-view for $300.
I heard that you could buy them, like you could get them if you purchased a pay-per-view. They gave you an offer to buy those as well. I don't know how much they were. I just talked to a friend a while ago that went to the show, and I had heard that those tickets were kind of a little buzz about them because of course they're going for so much on eBay now. But so there were people who were complaining that they didn't get one. And but my friend who was at the show, and he was on the floor area, he said they only gave them at the main entrance. So people coming off the floor, going out the main entrance. His take on it is they only probably made less than 1,000, and they were giving them to people coming off the floor. And because you pay more for your tickets. And he said that he and his sister just happened to be at this table. They were setting up to hand them out. He says, very disorganized. They were like, hey, come get your gift from Kiss. Kind of like you just said. He said, and people just started swarming. Now there's already people outside and they hear about it and they're trying to get back in. And they're pissed because security won't let them back in. But he said people were rushing to tables, knocking people over.
Oh, I didn't say that.
They were like, okay, everybody calm down, and we're not going to hand them out, because they had to get some sort of order. But I've been hearing stuff online about people saying, oh, the security was shoving people and not giving people stuff because there was right after the show, there supposedly was like a couple for sale on eBay. And you know how when you sell something on eBay, you can list, like if you have 20 copies of a comic book, you can put 20. There was somebody selling them, and they had 20 of them. So that means it had to be an inside employee.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But he said it could have just been some left over because it was so chaotic that they had to get people out of there without people getting hurt and or whatever. He said it was chaos when they started handing them out. People were getting knocked down, women, children, everything. He said
they should have either had enough for everybody, or they should have had them at the merch table, or they should, because this is what happens now. It creates conspiracy theory. People are going to have all these
anywhere.
theories.
I mean, if you go to any concert and say, hey, here, you want a free t-shirt or something, and everybody's going to swarm to get the free item.
But especially for this, anything connected to this, the shirts, the pics, the posters, the tickets, the anything, because it's the final Kiss show, is going to turn around and be on eBay. I wonder if at the merch tables, if they put limits on people, because the scalpers or the certain collectors would have just gone in there and just bought armfuls.
Well,
my friend said the night before they bought all the lithographs up Friday night, but they did have some more Saturday.
I know for a fact that they had signs that said one per piece, but I just went out to dinner at a friend of mine that was actually there, and I'll put that myth that they were just giving them out the front door was false, because I went out the back of the garden. However they funnel us out, there was a small table, and when I went out the door, I didn't realize where I was, and I was on the back side of the garden, not on 34th. And I had a friend of mine that was up in the 200s. He got them also.
Okay.
But they did have limits on the posters and the lithographs and tour books. but I know for a fact guys got 4 or 5 of these things because, you know, they were slipping these kids that were working these merch booths. Hey, here's an extra 50. Give me a couple more. That's what I heard. But, you know, it was big business. You know, and the show itself was great, but the only thing I was a little disappointed with, I said, this is the final night. This is the pay-per-view. The last time I was at something like this was like Stone's 50th, where they were doing the pay-per-view. And the Stones brought out some special guests. I knew that Ace and Peter weren't coming, but in the back of your head, you thought maybe. But I thought at least they might add a song or two for that last night. Like maybe do Coming Home and the encore, because they're back in New York City and they're ending the show. But they didn't do anything. It was the exact same set that I saw before the pandemic, which I explained earlier. I saw at the Garden in 2019, I guess, the beginning of the tour. And I saw them in Allentown right before the lockdown. Same exact set every night. And I mean, it was great. It's sad to see them go, and just to realize you're never going to see like Paul Stanley. You know, I got thinking about it at the show and after the show, like Sabbath are gone, Rush are gone. All our greats from the 70s are gone. The eerie thing about this show to me was I thought it was kind of cool, this Avatar gimmick being there, because they gave you this wristband. Of course, these were stolen too, because a lot of people didn't get these. They were on the like armrest of your chair, and you would slip this on, and they were synchronized with the music, and they flashed all different colors, and it lit up. If you see any footage, all the lights in the back, which remind you kind of the old cigarette lighters back in the 70s, because I'm old, or 80s. This was a synchronized light show. I talked to a guy that works at Yankee Stadium that comes to my store. He said that some of the other artists do use these for the light show. But this thing, an hour later, like, so I'm going ahead of myself. If you want me to give you a little rundown of the show. So before the show, the pay-per-view is there. They've got a girl sitting with these red sofas out where Paul does his not hang glide, the zip line out to the stage, which he's been doing for years. They were doing a filming out there, like a pre-show. They had Chris Angel. They had this, like, you know, they had all these guys talking out there. But I lost my mindset a little bit. But anyhow, so they were talking at, okay, so my mindset is, they said, make sure you stay to the very end of the show tonight, because they started doing this the beginning. It's the end, but the beginning. So at the very end of the show, after Rock and Roll Night, and they shot out all the confetti, which I think they might have a little extra confetti maybe for tonight, but they came out and they started doing the God Gave Rock and Roll to You, which they always do. And then the screens came up of what I think John just saw on the YouTube channel. And then there was a QR code you could scan that came up, and it had a countdown of 1 hour. So the show got over about 11. At midnight, this is when they launched themselves into AI. So at midnight, I'm stuck on the West Side Highway trying to get home. I still have this on my arm. This thing starts flashing at midnight. And it flashed all the way home. I got home about 2 a.m. This thing's still flashing. I left it on the
You sure it's not listening to you, that it's been spying on?
Might be. It might
Kiss
be.
is good with the merchandise thing. This may be like
So
they've been listening to you for the last 24 hours.
I'm gonna have to let them know that I did not get the event shirt inside because they sold out, but I bought this out on the streets of New York City, and it's got Madison Square Garden so on the back. So that's my bootleg parking lot shirt. It wasn't a parking lot because there's no parking lot at MSG.
And Steve, have you looked at the picture of the band on the back of that bootleg shirt?
Mm-hmm.
It's not Kiss.
What's it? Who
is it? Led Zeppelin?
No, it's a tribute band.
I thought it was the Avatar.
No, they use pictures of like a tribute band. It happens. Bootlegs are wrong all the time. Someone posted that up Friday on Facebook.
I mean, I sell real shirts,
That makes it worth even more money.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have bought a couple of these because these are the ones, if you look at, if you look online, these are the ones that go. But yeah, well, maybe that's the real Ace. You just forgot what he looks like.
All right, Butch, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the final show, the Avatar, the whole thing?
As far as the final show goes, I mean, I think I'm still in. I can't even. I've been having a hard time, even for someone who is pretty opinionated, and who's usually not at a loss for words. Like, I really have had a hard time getting started and even putting something. Like, I see, a bunch of people putting their tributes up on Facebook, and I really can't. I don't know that I'm still in a state of shock over it. That's not the right thing, but it's kind of like I just can't get it together in my head. I said to my wife the other day, I can't believe, like, because I came real close to going to the Baltimore show because I thought I can't go to New York, but Baltimore's, and I miss Cleveland. I didn't go to Cleveland, but I thought about Baltimore's only 4 hours away. Tickets were reasonable. I'll just drive down there. It's going to be the same show. At least I'll get to see him one more time. Yeah. Like, I've seen him countless. The first time was '84. They've been like the most important bands in my life in terms of me wanting to be involved in music, and even just like bringing me into listening to music. I mean, more than anyone, they were the band that was there when, the first band I can remember when I was young, like, 5 years old, like a lot of little kids were. And then you kind of like get away from music a little bit, but then when I got back into it, it was them again that really brought me back in. So it's weird. It's a weird feeling for me after, it's been like, every tour, it would seem like they were coming close. I've seen them so many times, and it's weird that I'm never going to get to see them again. I know don't even get, it's a topic for another day, but don't even get me started on all the, the Kiss haters and the ex-Kiss fans, or the whiny, bitter Kiss fans, because my head will explode. But those folks that say, oh, it's their last show. I mean, Paul Stanley, I don't know him personally, obviously, but if you know anything about the guy, the guy is proud of his accomplishments. And I think anyone that has a certain talent is very self-aware of when their talent has reached its limit. And the unfortunate thing for Paul was the catch-22 of it for him comes down to, you can't sing like you used to. A band like Kiss, you certainly cannot go away without doing this kind of run, this farewell tour. So what do? So then he gets caught up in he's using tapes behind him to boost his highs and to get through. Because he's one of the greatest vocalists of all time. He blew out his voice, entertaining all of us every night for years. Like, the guy sang like very few people could sing like him. And I think he's long past the point of having to prove himself to anyone. But anyway, I didn't go to the final show. I saw the last 3 songs, and it's still kind of like sinking in. It's kind of like it's a bummer for me that I won't get to see them again. But I am glad I got to see what I did, and it's cool to see, like, between the negative stuff. Like, I didn't even listen to Eddie Trunk, all of this kind of stuff going on, to see people putting up people that I wouldn't expect to put up tributes to Kiss. Like, I saw like Steve Vai put something out about how important the band was, and then guys that they're like Marty Friedman put something up, and then you see pictures of Jamie St. James, obviously, because he's friends with Tommy, but his history going back with Gene Simmons, to see the pictures of him up on Instagram and going to the shows and stuff. It's just cool, like, seeing, like, friends of mine, like, Darren posting his thoughts about it. And so it's a bittersweet thing. I think I know a lot of people talked about the set list being the same, and the thing about them is that I understand it's the last show, and in some ways it's natural to hope that they would do something a little bit different out of the ordinary. But I kind of do feel like that they're the kind of band that it's like if you saw them in Baltimore and you saw them in Cleveland and you saw them in Allentown, and that everyone gets the same show. Like not one audience is more important than another. Like they're taking their time to say goodbye to you. I know it's the last show, but what makes it that because you can afford X amount of dollars more to see them at Madison Square Garden and fly in from all over, that doesn't necessarily mean the people at the other cities were less important. I don't know. That's just my thought on that. I'm a fan of changing set lists. I wish over the years, but at the same time, I saw them in 2004, and when they were doing things like I didn't get these songs unfortunately, but when they were playing All the Way and Love Her All I Can, like these are people who were scratching their heads other than hardcore Kiss fans. So it's like, what do you want? I mean, Ace and Peter aren't going to be there. There's X amount of dollars. There's whatever spite between the band members is. I wish that it was something that could have been
put aside at least for the night.
You wish it could be put aside, but sometimes it's like, man, I've said to people, if you've been in a relationship with someone or in a band, like sometimes there are irreconcilable things that happen that you just can't imagine. Like even if it's for the benefit of your best friend, like can you imagine like inviting like an ex-wife or an ex-husband who is you have an awful relationship with, who did something terrible to you, and be in the same space with them?
And it's disrespectful to Tommy and Eric, who, I mean, you guys can probably tell me how long they've been in the band. They've been in the band
30 and 20 years. I mean, 20 for Tommy and 30 for Eric.
So to have some like spot in the show, big highlight, let's say Rock and Roll All Night, to say to Tommy and Eric, hey guys, thanks, but we're gonna have these, Ace and Peter are gonna come up and they're gonna get to have their big moment, and everybody's gonna go crazy, which is gonna make them. So I understand it for the reasons that you said. This sort of ex-wife analogy is ex-girlfriend is a good thing to compare it to, and out of respect for the Eric and Tommy.
I think it wouldn't have hurt to say something like mention, like it wouldn't have taken them more than a couple minutes to say, before we split, we couldn't have been here with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, which they said, God, they say it all the time. They said it, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they say it all the time. They would not be where they are without Ace and Peter. But it seems redundant in a way, but I mean, okay, they could have taken a couple minutes, said, Ace and Peter, and then, to the memory of Eric Carr, Bruce, Vinny, Mark St. John, anyone that's been involved with the band, like, the big ones. But again, these are things that they also talk about in interviews. They've acknowledged the importance of Bill Aucoin and Sean Delaney and these kind of people. So,
what they could have done? They could have had some point in the show where they have a big screen and they're showing images, and there's a song where they go and they're showing everybody who's been in the band.
Someone today pointed that out, that Wasp did it on the last tour that Wasp did. They had like, I saw the tour and they had the video screens behind them and showed like a bunch of people that were in the band. Something like that. I acknowledge
and that's them tipping their hat to the old members.
I mean,
acknowledging them.
Of course, Skinner did that on their tour. Yeah. They do that. They show Ronnie. They show, and even, and of course the Pantera thing shows all kinds of footage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so as far as the end thing, in my opinion, I do think it is the end. You will not see another. We're definitely not going to see another tour from them. Maybe a spot show here and there, but not with the makeup and not with heavy costumes and effects. But putting that aside, this whole idea of the avatars, at first I was kind of like, I was expecting them to announce, when they said there was an announcement that they were going to do like the thing that people have talked about over the years. They're going to like have official tribute bands, or they're going to audition people and do a Kiss 2.0, or the kids are going to come in, because Nick sounds just like Gene. Evan can play guitar obviously and sing, but I didn't expect the Avatar thing. I can't tell by the way that they look is a little bit odd to me, but here's the thing. This is a technology that is, it's starting to really take off. I mean, you look at like these Oculus systems, that are selling
Mhm.
like crazy. The whole AI thing is becoming big with kids in video gaming. And here's the thing, like the ILM and this Pop House that are doing this are the ones that put this ABBA show together. Now that ABBA show,
Mm.
like if you go on YouTube and look up, like you will see people raving about this show, about the way that it's put together. Like they have it's set up in London. They have like I guess it's a green arena that they built for it that they can tear down and move. Like I think it's going to come to the US at some
Mm.
point. But I mean, this thing, so ABBA like is the first one out of the gate with this. And it's crazy popular. I mean, I wrote some of this down. As of September 4th of this year, they've done $150 million in sales, 1.5 million tickets sold to this thing. They run it every, 7 times a week. They run it 99% full house every
Wow.
time.
Wow.
So the potential for it to be cool is there. The thing is, like, people are laughing about it and saying it makes Kiss a joke. No, it's cool that they're
Oh.
doing. I like that they're trying something different, and what they're trying to do is, and the risk of something like this is when you get in something like this as an early adopter of it, you run the
Right.
risk that it could fall on its face, but you also, take the chance that the reward could be big. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
like early on, this is going to be clunky. Like the Abbott thing, actually, I have to say, what little bit I saw does look better than the Kiss stuff. But the things that I can imagine them doing with this, um are tremendous. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to give it a chance. Like it's always one of those things. Is like no one's forced with anything Kiss does. No one's forcing anyone to buy it.
Yep.
You
I,
don't.
I I got
Yeah.
one idea, Butch, if I can interrupt.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
bad. I'm very
Like,
bad. I interrupt a lot, but all night long I was joking with my friends because I maybe because Chris Angel was in the preview, and I'm like, Vegas. I'm like, they're gonna announce a residency in the Spear. And I
Yeah.
was making this up to everybody. But could they do the Avatar thing in that Spear in Vegas?
Why not?
I'm just brainstorming, and I wouldn't put it past them to try
I
something like that.
I think something like that would be
Because
cool.
that
I think,
giant screen, you could just see them all
yeah,
over it, and who
the
knows?
Vegas for sure was the first thing I thought of. I don't. The Sphere I think holds like so many people. I don't know what the capacity is of
Yeah, who
this ABBA
knows?
show, but
Yep.
in order to keep it running, I would think the crowd might have to be. You might have to keep it smaller. But
Mm-hmm.
man, there's so many possibilities with this, and yeah, it might come out and be totally cheesy, but it might
Exactly.
come out and be cool. But we won't know until we see it. And right now, we're just seeing the earliest phases of it. And I'm sure I remember seeing the news when ABBA was first, when they're putting the reunion album out and they were getting this thing together. Like you just saw bits and pieces. It did. I mean, and the likenesses of those four are tremendous. What they do is they have a live band playing, but the vocal tracks and obviously are pumped in, but they have backing singers, and then they have the band's off to the side, and they have the screens, and then lighting effects. I mean, this is beyond like that cheesy like Dio hologram that
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
but again, that was early, so it's like the earlier it is, as it moves on, it's going to be um as the technology comes along, and if it's a success, it'll get better and better. We'll see what happens with it. I mean, it could be cool, and it won't be the first time that they tried something. At least they're trying something,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's not them like running. They want to still be involved with the band. They're still. I mean, I know they're in their 70s, but I mean, who are we to tell anyone to sit back and do nothing if they want to be
Mm-hmm.
involved? I mean, they still have, I mean, you don't sign a major label record deal unless you want to make some money. And they've always been entertainers first, um, rock and roll band kind of second. And even though for me, the music's great, like, and there are real bands, but they see themselves as more than just a band. It's all encompassing. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
like, I'm cautiously optimistic about it. But I know everyone won't be, especially a lot of people our age, and people that already hate the bands. are going to think it's stupid anyway. They won't even give it a chance, but they don't count.
I
Because
saw like they made the avatar of the fake Ace. I already saw that.
I mean, well, you have to pay Ace for his likeness. It's like any visual, for a movie. Like with the Runaways, they couldn't. There were certain things they couldn't do because they couldn't get permission from certain members of the band, I think, to tell their story. So
Jackie, I think.
Yeah.
I got a lot of flack for wearing this around because this is from the 2000 tour, or no, the 2010 tour, and it has Rock and Roll Over with Tommy and Eric.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dude,
I used to
Steven,
get people, oh my God, look at that shirt. What
people online were irate about the Destroyer Madison Square Garden shows. I saw people like flipping out that they put Tommy and Eric's face over Ace and Peters in their costumes on the art from Destroyer on the t-shirt. So,
and I tell you what, you couldn't buy one of those shirts if you wanted Saturday night. So I think they did okay with them.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tony?
That's my rant.
Cool.
What do you think, Tony?
A lot of what Butch, I agree a lot with what Butch said. I mean, I grew up on Kiss. I mean, I've said recently in a couple of Facebook posts, I am who I am today because of Kiss, because I discovered Kiss when I was 7 years old, and I was just enamored with everything Kiss there for a long while. Of course, I got into other bands and I was into other stuff, but kind of just like Butch said, when I really started getting into music big time, around 10 years old, I still went back to Kiss, and I always supported Kiss when everybody was like, oh, they're yesterday's news and they're a kids band and screw them, they're washed up. I mean, I remember seeing the Elder pictures in Hit Parader of the new costumes when the Elder came out, and I was excited about it because I was like, wow, they're here, maybe they're kind of, because I was into some new wave stuff and all by then, and I was like, they're trying something a little different. They're kind of going more in a Star Wars direction or something with these costumes and stuff. So I always supported them. I never gave up on them, And I was lucky. I mean, I saw them 24 times over the years. My first tour that I saw was Animalized tour, which was I saw it in January of '85. So that was my first show.
Hey guys, I think I don't want to interrupt, but I gotta run, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you.
I gotta hop over to Pete Pardo's Sea of Tranquility here. I'll get in trouble.
Thanks,
Okay,
Steve.
man.
See you,
Great
man.
seeing you, Steven.
But yeah, just like I said, just been a fan for so long, and I going into, I mean, me and a guy, we used to do a Kiss fanzine back, pre-internet. We were doing a fanzine back into like 19, I think we were doing it in like 91, 92, something like that. And there were a lot of Kiss fanzines out, but we were just doing a little one based out of North Carolina, and going out and seeing tribute bands. Before that was a big thing, you had the Kiss tribute bands. We would go out and kind of plug our fanzine at some of those shows and stuff. I got to go see the when they did the Kiss conventions that were the exclusive conventions, to where I saw it a couple of times, in Atlanta and New York. And I mean, that was just amazing to see.
Killer.
And, it was so cool. And then it was just, you think back on that. Did you guys either one of you guys go to that?
I went to the one in Pittsburgh. Yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Think about it now, Butch. It was $100 for a ticket. And people,
I know.
Oh, you're paying $100 to go to this thing? What was it, 1995?
Something like that. I remember that about the sticker shock of the price was like, oh my God.
Yeah, you can't hardly park for that $100 now.
I know.
But it was amazing. You got to go, and they played unplugged. They did a question and answer thing, and then they did like in Atlanta, it was like a free for all. Hey, you guys want to meet us? And everybody just jumped on the stage and stood next to them. In New York, they had it a little more organized, where they were behind a table and stuff. But got to meet them and stuff, and that was so cool. And then coming into I saw seeing the reunion tour. I mean, that was something I thought I'd never see. When they made that announcement on the Grammys that time, I mean, that was just like, my heart was pounding out, just like it was when I watched the Unmasking on MTV in 1983. You know, it was the same. You know, it was just, but yeah, I thought I'd never see it, and I think I went to like 3 shows in a row on that tour, and I kept supporting them. You know, of course, I went to the farewell tour, the original farewell
Yeah.
tour, the original band, but yeah, and then I started working in the concert industry, so I actually got to work for Kiss several times, you know, in production, working as a runner, and you working one-on-one with their crew people and stuff. I mean, I'd been in conversations with band members and stuff, you know, in the hall, and I actually drove Gene Simmons to his hotel one night, you know, after they played a gig, and you know, I was like 7 years old trying to drive a van, you know, so it's, you know, I didn't use stroke, but I was like, wow. I mean, I used to draw pictures of this dude on my freaking notebook and I'm driving it, you know.
Now I'm driving them in a limo.
Yeah, it was a van. We're in a white passenger, you know, van, you know, plain van. And
Did you think of just like locking the doors and driving
well,
to
you
your
know,
house
I
and
didn't
like keeping
know.
them?
They said pull the van around. We got to get you run someone to the hotel, you know. And I'm just sitting there waiting. I got a Kiss crew shirt on, you know, that I had gotten at a different show I had to work. And he hops in. He's wearing a Kiss hat, and he just looks at me. He goes, "Well, with your shirt and my hat, we sure are incognito, aren't we?" And then he hears my accent, and he goes, "Oh, so you're definitely from here. I can tell by your drawl." You know, and he's like, he was telling some, you know, off-color jokes and stuff. It's kind of funny, you know. But yeah, he was cool, you know, and we chatted a little bit on the trip, and but yeah, I mean, I would have never expected something like that to happen, you know. And then I like I said, I've tried to go see them as much as I can when they come around, and you know, I've never been sold on Tommy and Eric in the costumes. I kind of wish they had just done different characters, but I also see the, you know, the selling point of having, you know, 4 iconic figures and having them there, you know, the faces, because you get into this new age where a lot of people have no clue who is on stage. I mean, they know the songs. It's like the people that go see Journey and think the guy's Steve Perry, you know, not Ornell, but when they had Steve, the other guy, Steve Algeri, they probably thought it was Steve Perry. They had no idea. You know, people go see Foreigner and they have no idea that's not the guy that were in the band. So the same thing with Kiss. You got a good amount of people that go to the shows and just know the faces, and they don't really know. But
Tony,
yeah,
not to interrupt, do you think that maybe they as far, but obviously they didn't have this avatar thing is a newer technology, but do you think maybe even back then there were discussions among the band that at some point they would retire, like, and maybe they did consider the fact that if you keep the same characters, you're branding for the future, so that if people step into the roles, like, moving forward, it's not like, you know, every time, like, switching up, you have to have a new character, just those 4, you know, so that maybe when the day came they hung it up, they could just pass it on.
And they were hinting at that.
That's what we've always heard. We've always heard there'd be somebody replacing Gene and Paul. But you know, the avatars, I was just looking over here at my Kiss DVDs that I have in this room, and it seems like I had a DVD of some sort one time. It was called Kiss Immortals or something. It was like a little, like almost like an AI thing. I don't know if it was for a video game or something they had created.
Someone mentioned a video game they put out at one time that
I was trying to see if I still had it. I don't see it over here, so I may not have it anymore. I may have given it to someone, but because it was like an official Kiss thing, but it was not like a concert or something. It may have been a video game. I don't think I ever watched it. I think someone gave it to me, that, you know, because stuff like that you could find at Best Buy and the $2 bin and stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I tried, you know, honestly though, I really wanted to go see one of these last shows. I did see them last year, and I saw them right before the tour, right before pandemic, in 19. And then last year they came around and I was like, I should go. And my girlfriend has never seen them. I was like, you got to go see Kiss. You got to see them one time, you know, because you got to put up with my nerdiness over them. You got to experience it one time, you know. She was probably more familiar with, you know, the Heavens on Fire period and stuff, you know, the 80s stuff. So I got hooked up with some tickets. We had great seats. We went. She had a ball, And I was like, it's a good show. I always have a good time. It's not the best Kiss show I've ever seen, but I enjoyed watching her watch it because she had such a good time at the show.
Exactly.
And Paul, he's just started sounding rough, and we could tell he could use some tracks, some backing tracks. And I was like, whatever, you got to get through. One thing I did want to say about that though, I watched the pay-per-view the other night, and Paul he definitely sounded rough at times. And I didn't notice any backing tracks at all. Now, I mentioned this on a thread on Facebook, and I got jumped all over. People, oh yeah, he's using backing tracks. I'm like, if you're using backing tracks, wouldn't you want something that sounds closer to the original album? Then
yeah, why would you have backing tracks where your voice is cracking and
I seen Motley Crue using them, and Vince still sounds like crap, but this is Paul Stanley, and I think he would have tried to have something that sounded a little better. Maybe the pay-per-view mix had it very low in the mix, but I was impressed that he went out and sang without the help of backing tracks for his last performance. And maybe it's because knew he was going to be filmed, it's going to be on pay-per-view, and people could catch him more. And also, I noticed a lot like David Coverdale on his last tour, Paul would sing the verses and let the band members sing the choruses. And if you had backing tapes, you would have heard Paul's voice on those background vocals, but you didn't. You only heard Eric and Gene most of the time. Tommy sings a little bit as well, but Eric Singer is a pretty damn good singer.
Yeah. There's also the thing when you know that you're not going to have a show for a while. In this case, it's the last one. You don't have to. I've done this myself. Like you don't have to be as cautious on that night, and you can just like let it do your, let it out, like push 100%. And so maybe that was part of what you heard on the other night. Paul's just at the, he doesn't have to sing the next night or two nights later.
And I thought he sounded, again, I was unaware of the pay-per-view thing, but I saw people talking about it in advance on Facebook, and there were people posting on Facebook while it was happening live, and a lot of people were like, oh, Paul's voice is really rough and he's starting off bad and stuff like that. And there's of course now on YouTube there's fan filmed footage, the full concert all over, and I found a nice quality one and I watched a lot of it, and his voice sounds rough, but in my opinion, it's not as I've heard way worse from the last like 3 to 5 years with Paul. And I think Butch, you made a comment on this, and I totally agree with this. It's okay for Paul or any rock metal musician to say, I don't have it anymore. Nobody gets angry at an athlete when an athlete says, man, I don't have any cartilage left in my knee. I can't walk anymore. Well, heavy metal, hard rock singing, Butch, this, it's a very physical thing. It's a very physical sport. It's like being football. This is why athletes tend to not play into their 30s, least of all their 60s or their 70s, because
Paul's in his 70s.
It's like a contact sport, so it's totally understandable. I noticed that he changed some of the melody lines every now and then where he would duck down. I'm totally fine with that. Do what you got to do to get through the thing. But I think it was time for them. He had to be self-aware that, okay, it's time for this to end. I give Kiss credit for while everybody was talking, I was going through my head trying to think of bands that have retired. And okay, Rush did it, but didn't they just say they were retiring from touring? They weren't necessarily. And then of course, Neil got sick and, Neil passed away, but they're making this conscious decision like, okay, we're retiring, but we're setting up a retirement plan. It's almost like somebody planning for old age, like, okay, I'm going to move to Florida and I'm going to live off this much money a month. They're setting up this retirement plan, and I don't think there's been another band that has really done this and to this extent really thought it out, like what they're going to do after they retire. And this is something that we've got to start accepting the reality that a lot of our favorite bands, especially the bands that started in the 70s and even some of the bands from the 80s. Look, I just saw Nico McBrain just did a thing at his Rockin' Ribs where he has a band, the Titanium Tarts or something he calls it. They were playing like out in the parking lot. He's done this a bunch of times before. And I was listening to some of these clips, and everybody knows that Nico had a heart thing. I don't know if he had a stroke or a heart attack or whatever, but Nico is dealing with some health things. And as I'm listening to him play, I was like, wow, you can really hear that. I've heard clips of him in this parking lot from 7 years ago where, it sounds like Nico. You can just tell that he's not, he's dealing with things. So when is it going to happen with Iron Maiden? So many of these bands, they're past the 50-yard line. They're in, they're approaching this point, and I'm kind of glad that Kiss is putting this much thought into it. People can mock the Avatar thing and question whether that's the right thing to do. And to comment on Butch, you mentioned the ABBA thing. My wife and I were just in Stockholm this last summer, and there's an ABBA museum in Stockholm, and it's endorsed by the band. So there's all kinds of their own personal things in there.
Right.
And there's a room where there's, I don't know if you would consider these avatars, but they're like holograms, I guess. I don't really know, where you can walk up on stage and you can be like you're up there with the band. And I've got a video on my phone here of my wife up there, singing Dancing Queen and moving back and forth. And it looks freaking great. And people were lined up and they absolutely loved it. So if they do this Avatar thing, maybe in an immersive Kiss experience, like Steven mentioned, that dome thing in Las Vegas, maybe if it is some kind of thing where it's like, I don't know, just some sort of experience, something beyond just going in and sitting there and watching the avatars on the screen, some sort of all immersive thing. Maybe there's memorabilia in the hallways. Maybe you can jump up on a stage and pretend like you're rocking out with Kiss or whatever. I think that it could work, and I applaud Kiss for doing this, for creating some kind of thing so that we can continue to, for people who want to, can still continue to enjoy the band. If you don't want to go to it, you don't have to go to it. But let's face it, these artists are getting older. I was expecting, I thought that, and you mentioned it already, Butch, that they were going to come out, and I thought there was going to be something, Kiss the New Era. They were going to have a shot of a bunch of guys from behind, and you can see them putting the makeup on in the mirror, and all of a sudden they come walking out and they go, these people were handpicked by Kiss. There's going to be a Kiss South America, Kiss, North America, Kiss Europe. Maybe they come out and there's some little aspect of the makeup that sort of signifies that, like, this is Kiss, and that's what I thought that they were going to do. And who knows, maybe there'll still be some sort of band thing involved with this Avatar. And I think people would have been able to embrace that if it was like, hey, this has the Kiss stamp of approval. You can picture like them posting a video of Gene and Paul coaching the band and stuff like that. So I kind of wish they had gone in that direction. And I think that that's something, and this could be a topic for another video, like what would we want our bands to do? Imagine if Iron Maiden did that, had a band that they endorsed that was, I don't know. There's just so many things they could do. I applaud Kiss for being forward thinking. It's always dangerous when you're the first person to sort of embrace this, but Kiss is always, when it comes to the business side of things, Kiss has always been cutting edge when it comes to business. The lunch boxes, the whole thing. So I applaud them for it. Yeah, and I'm just like everybody else. People think I don't like Kiss, but hey, I was even getting misty-eyed. I tell the story all the time on my channel. I had an uncle that was only 9 years older than me, and he was a Kiss maniac. And so that was my first exposure to hard rock. I had a teenager that lived next door to me. His room was decked out in Kiss stuff. He would play drums to Alive One, at deafening volumes. All the kids would be there in their big wheels. He was in the basement of his house, everybody looking in his window and everything. So Kiss, when Martin was on my show, we talked about this, about how there's a certain generation of people that always cite the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and that's what made me want to be a rock star. And then you go 10 years younger than that, and everybody is talking about it was Kiss. Kiss was what made them
Sure.
get
Yeah.
into music, turned them into music fans. If you're anywhere near our age, 5 years younger or 5 years older, you can relate to this. Even Martin said it. Everybody's dressed up like a member of Kiss at some point in their life for Halloween.
Yeah.
It's just they're such a part of our life. And in some ways, it's strange to see a band acknowledging their retirement like this. Usually it's kind of like, we mentioned Leonard Skinner and people like, but those were because there were accidents, there were tragedies, and the band just had to suddenly end, or the band self-imploded on themselves. This is like kind of a new frontier a little bit, in that they're fully embracing like, hey guys, we're retiring, and here's our plan for what we're going to do moving forward here with the Kiss, brand, the Kiss legacy. And I'm okay with this. I don't want these bands to totally disappear and then we've just got nothing. I mean, we all got to start accepting the reality that these our favorite bands aren't going to be here forever. So, hey, if you're listening out there, Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, start planning your after you retire plan here, so that we can continue to enjoy your music in some way.
I did want to I was going to say,
Tony, go ahead.
I did want to mention, I was saying, earlier, I was saying that, I did see him on this tour, like, earlier, late last year. But when I heard about the farewell dates, I was like, I probably won't go. It's in December. It's a really heavy work time for me. I'm in retail and it's Christmas season and all. But I tell you, if they had said for sure that Ace and Peter and Bruce were going to be there, Vinny, whatever, but if I'd known and they were going to be there for sure, I'd have been over backwards to be there. I would have had to be there for some closure of it all. And it's a little disappointing that they couldn't work it out. I understand what you say about trying to get along with people that you don't get along with, like ex-lovers or whatever. But yeah, but it would have been nice to have. It was watching the show, I was a little disappointed. I knew that there was Ace and Peter weren't going to be there, but I was expecting the video montage. I was really expecting something to pop up with them showing everybody, because they did show some stuff behind them once or twice. You saw, like, with somebody with Ace and Peter in it, but it wasn't much. But just something that would have had Eric Carr, something to show everybody that's ever been in the band, just to say thank you. We couldn't be here without you. I thought that would have been really cool, and I was a little disappointed with that. But just seeing as far as seeing Kiss go away, I made my peace with it, and I've seen them. I've seen them. I've got good memories. I've still got the music. If I never see them again, I'm good with it, And the Avatar thing doesn't really interest me much to go see as of right now, but I'm interested to see what will happen with it. And like you guys are saying, I feel like a Vegas thing where they could do a couple shows a day, something you could go to. Maybe they even travel to big cities. I don't see it just going on tour and playing like every city that they do now. But maybe something stationary in big cities, maybe it would happen. And I don't, I'd love to see Gene go out and do a solo tour. That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Gene's voice is still there, and he's still in good shape, man. And not having to wear the costume, I think he could get that band that he had a few years ago, the guys that play with Ace, and that would be a great show to see.
Yeah, really, the only thing he has going on that has affected him, I think, is like all of us as we get older, is he forgets the words, which he always has. But other than that, the guy still sings great. Surprisingly, I mean, if you would have told me 30 years ago that at this point the voice that would have held up the best between him and Paul was his, I would have said, you're out of your freaking mind.
And Martin on the Contrarians, he did a special thing, just him, and he threw out some ideas for what he would like to see them do. And one that I thought was really good was to do kind of like what Bruce Dickinson did with this spoken word thing. Imagine if Gene and Paul went to theaters and they just pulled up some chairs and told stories. And
That would
Martin
be
had a good
awesome.
suggestion where people would get mad about this because if they didn't do it in your city. But let's say select cities, like when they're in New York, they're gonna talk, but they're gonna go really in depth on Hotter Than Hell. When they're somewhere else, they're going to talk about Animalize. Just talk, but there'll be a little, different focus in different regions and stuff like that. But as again, as we're talking about, as these artists get older, well, what can they do afterwards to still keep interest in the band and stuff? I think that suggestion from Martin, I thought, was great. Just having them come out, pull up a chair and just tell stories. Maybe you take some fan questions. You just sort of just engage with the fans. And I think people would, again, we're at this point where, and when I was 12 years old, I didn't want to go and listen to Gene Simmons sitting in a rocking chair telling stories. I wanted to see him spit blood and, all that stuff. But at this point in time, and where we're at with all this, I would like that.
Well, you think too, Kiss, if they just think of a situation where this wasn't happening, it was just done. We're done. Kiss is still a big enough entity that basically it makes enough money that it's gonna keep. They're gonna look how much stuff Pink Floyd and look how much stuff Led Zeppelin sells a year, merchandise wise. Shirts and whatever memorabilia they can come up with, and they haven't been around in years or played a show. I mean, so Kiss is even got more marketable stuff than that. So, but of course now, with the avatars, we're going to have a whole new line of Kiss toys coming out and everything. So the collectors, I tried to be, I'm somewhat of a Kiss collector. I have a little bit of stuff, but I just stopped years ago because I was like, it's just no way I can keep up with this. They've constantly got something coming out. So really, the only time I ever buy anything now is if it's something from the 70s or something I run across, And that's really, other than these figures on the wall behind me, that's about the only stuff that I really kept was the old 70s stuff, like the Lunchbox and dolls and stuff. I didn't buy all the new stuff that come out. But hey, if you're into it and you really want it, more power to you,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they could, like you said, I mean, they could easily be a band that just said, we're done. We're just going to sit back and, chill on the beach with our families. Or, Paul's got his daughters are younger. And, but I think people talk about their, in a negative way about their egos and the money and this and that. But honestly, I think part of this with them, if you have listened to Gene and Paul over the years, or they set out in the very beginning to be one of the biggest bands of all time, and I really think that some of what they're doing now is an attempt to not just keep something there to keep the interest going for the merch, but is also an attempt, and we'll see if it works, to connect with like these kids who are going with their parents now. Like my son is almost 17 now, but he went to his first Kiss show with me when he was 10. Same with my eldest daughter. I took her. It's to connect with the younger crowd and keep the name. Like, how many bands they've lasted 50 years now? How many bands do that? Let alone, like, if this thing works, we could be talking about them. And who talks about the Dave Clark 5 now? No one. I mean, I do because I like their songs, but it's like, this is a chance. Or, people talk about the Beatles. I mean, this is a chance to be like totally immortal. Like, I mean, Kiss is already one of the most memorable bands of all time, one of the most divisive, but also just legendary. And I think this is a risk they're taking to try to like push that time frame so that the legend just even outlives them and keeps in perpetuity, keeps going and going. Long after they're gone, this stuff could still be going.
And you mentioned young people, there's a whole, young people pile into a Coliseum to watch a DJ with a light show.
Yeah.
A guy press play on a laptop.
Yeah.
And, as you were saying that, it just occurred to me that, first of all, I think that because I've watched the videos of when they showed this Avatar thing at the end of the concert, everyone is a little bit confused about exactly what do they plan on doing with this. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they just released a video on the Kiss YouTube channel with the creators of the Avatar thing. And after watching 32 minutes of it, I still don't know what they're going to do with it. You know, they spent 30 minutes talking about how cool the band, how the band's going to live forever, but they didn't really tell us what they're going to do with this. And I'm assuming that eventually we will know, but maybe it will be like a type of thing where, you know, they'll license this out where you'll be at a club waiting for a band to come on, and the Kiss avatars will be performing between sets or something, and Kiss will be getting a cut of that. You know, it'll be like this sort of thing where like Kiss will be everywhere. You know,
Yeah,
I could picture that, you know, they talked about, didn't they do something with the Empire State Building? You know, I could picture like you're on Broadway in New York and you're seeing the avatars like floating in the air, you know, on Broadway or something, and the music's playing. You know, it turns into this thing where it's like it can exist, it can be anything, it can be anywhere, they could do anything with this, the Kiss. And like you said, it sort of turns into this thing where maybe 75 years from now there'll be people where they're not even sure what, oh yeah, I recognize this and I don't even know exactly where it came from. You know, it takes on sort of this life of its own. And you know, we didn't even mention artificial intelligence and how that could play into this. When I made a video, artificial intelligence video here, and on the channel a while back, and I mentioned Kiss because I thought that they have the mindset to do this. When you see these artificial intelligence things on YouTube where Kurt Cobain singing a Soundgarden song or something, what people are doing is they're taking these isolated tracks, isolated vocal tracks, which are very limited on YouTube, and they're running it through an AI program, and then they're putting it into another song. Well, now imagine if Kiss says, okay, artificial intelligence company, here are the isolated vocal tracks for Paul, Gene, Ace, Peter, Eric from every album, and you let your machine analyze it. Here's the isolated guitar parts, the isolated bass, the drums, blah, 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 blah. Have your machines study this, analyze this. I mean, it's scary to think, but these avatars could almost take on a life of their own. You know what I mean?
Record a new album, right?
Yeah, the avatars could be recording their own. You know, a new album could come out strictly AI created, strictly. You know, I don't know. There's so much potential for it, and this stuff. You mentioned the Dio hologram. I mean, that was, how many years ago was that? 5 years ago? 7 years ago, and that already seems like ancient technology.
And I don't know, they said it cost so much they just never got it going because it was so much involved in putting the show together. You know, they couldn't just play any hall. It had to be certain places with the, you know, ceiling had to be a certain height and everything.
Yeah, that's the thing about this. The ABBA show is that you know, for them to do it properly, I guess right now it has to be in this, you know, they have to do it in one spot for a certain amount of time. Like, so I wouldn't see this Kiss thing as being like a tour, like where they're going to play Pittsburgh one night, you know, Charleston the next, or anything like that. Like, it's going to be in one place for a while. It's going to be a destination thing, that, or who knows? I mean, I don't know if it's going to be something like where they'll sync up with like one of these companies, like with the headsets, and maybe it's something that you people from all over the world, like there's an event like online and you go through their space if you got the technology, and you just witness like something that we won't know. We won't know until it happens. So I'm so intrigued by it right now. I mean,
we'll see, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys got any final words you want to say on Kiss before we wrap it up? Have we said it all?
Yeah, pretty much. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
all
I
right.
said,
Well, there you go.
I've got good memories, and I can't complain with my history with the band for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they've been for as much as a visual thing as they are, their music has really been a soundtrack to a lot of the most fun times in my life. Like any of us of a certain age, they were in the background, like at some of the greatest things we ever did. You know, like driving around in cars with friends and doing stupid shit. One of my best friends of all time I met because I was walking through high school and I had a Kiss t-shirt on, and he walked up and said, and this is a time when it wasn't real cool to like Kiss at all. I mean, this is before they resurged in the 80s. And he's like, "Oh, you like Kiss? I like Kiss." And we're still like, you know, best friends to this day. So the band has brought people together, and they've been an important part of my life. So I can't you know, there's decisions they've made over the years that I don't, you know, like with anything, you're not going to love everything. I listen to Crazy Nights today and I still don't really care for it, but
Yeah.
um,
Well, I was going to say the same thing, man. It's like I've met some great people over the years because of Kiss.
yeah.
And being our age group that we are in, you meet people and you meet people you hang out with guys in death metal bands, but they're our age, and they don't listen to nothing, they don't listen to any glam rock or anything, but you say Kiss, they go, "Oh yeah, man, I love Kiss."
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's or they're into punk rock or something, but they all kind of
Stoner rock, whatever.
yeah, they all grew up on Kiss, and yeah, people that just like all kinds of people that are into country, they grew up on Kiss, so everybody has that common factor.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go, everybody. Let us know your thoughts, your memories of Kiss, what you thought of the final show. Were you at the show? Did you watch the pay-per-view? What do you think about the Avatar? Where do you think Kiss is going to go in the future? What do you think about some of our thoughts on this topic? It's something, yeah, I mean, you could just talk for hours on this because there's so many different angles and offshoots and where this could go and everything. So it's going to be really interesting. We'll see where this goes. I'm really looking forward to it. Let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'd like to thank Butch and Tony and Steven for joining us here at the Lair. And till we see you all again, make sure you rock and roll all night and party every day.